In this video, I'm gonna be telling you all the secrets you need to know to farm fruits 10 times more efficiently. Okay, so first up, we got the most useless way to get fruits in the whole of Blox Fruits. And it's not really fruits, it's just specifically just one exact fruit. And this is from the doghouse, also known as Wenlock. And the place you can find this is underneath the huge tree that's located on the second sea of where the diamond boss spawns. Once you walk into the secret area and talk to the doghouse, it's gonna say, woof woof, yo bro, wanna buy a physical kilo fruit for 97 Robux. You can trade it in with the noob scientist for a special microchip. And then if you end up buying the fruit, I don't know what to tell you, you might have an IQ that's lower than 5. Me personally, I do not recommend this method because you're literally buying a kilo fruit for 97 Robux, and I don't really think that's a good deal. I'm pretty sure the devs just added this as a troll, and the only people that would buy this are Roblox millionaires, and I'm not one of them, and I also don't think any of you watching are, so let's go to the next one. So the very first way in this game that you can get fruits, and this is a method that a lot of you definitely did not know about, it's through an NPC called the Advanced Fruit Dealer, and the only place you can find this NPC is on a secret island called Mirage Island. I'm guessing a lot of you don't know what this is, so let me clue you in. So everyone knows that there are different sea events in the game, like when CB spawns and when ships attack you. Well, Mirage Island is one of those sea events that can happen, but this island can only spawn in the third sea. And this island is also useful for other things like race awakenings and getting things like blue gear, but the Advanced Fruit Dealer is also an extra thing to this island, and this is the only place he can be found at. The Advanced Fruit Dealer is exactly what he sounds like. He's just a fruit dealer, but an advanced version of him. And this guy makes the regular Blox Fruit Dealer look like a complete joke. So the Advanced Fruit Dealer has a minimum of 7 fruits in stock compared to the 3 fruits of the normal Blox Fruit Dealer. And you also have a way higher chance for legendary fruits to being in stock, and the normal dealer does not have this. And he also restocks every 2 hours, meanwhile the normal Blox Fruit Dealer restocks every 4 hours. But the thing is, when the Mirage Island spawns in, you only have around 15 to 20 minutes to find this guy and buy everything you want from him, and that's pretty difficult because this island is super huge and it limits your vision by a butt ton. Is waiting for the Mirage Island to spawn in just to find the Advanced Fruit Dealer worth it? In my opinion, yes, because you have a way higher chance of getting good fruits, but I already have most of the good fruits in the game, so I won't be needing this trick. But if you guys want to get your hands on some legendary fruits quick, this is definitely the way for you. So the next way you can get fruits in Blox Fruits is through a method called the Pirate Raid. And a lot of you might not know this because I don't think a lot of you are in the third sea. And this is the only sea that you can actually grind this way. So everybody knows about the huge location on the map called the Castle on the Sea. This is literally the main area for third sea players to hang out. Literally everything's here. The spawn point NPC, the luxury boat dealer, the boat dealer, the elite pirate, player hunters, the Blox Fruit remover, mysterious scientist, cloakster, butler, and literally anything you need. But there's actually raids that happen on this place. Every hour and 15 minutes, a message will appear in the chat saying pirates have been spotted approaching the castle, and this is talking about the castle on the sea. And around 30 seconds after that message appears, the pirates will start raiding the castle. The galley pirates will start spawning, and they'll have way higher levels than normal. And the person that kills the last pirate in this raid will actually get a completely random Blox Fruit. But you have to be the one that deals the finishing blow to the last enemy. You can't just be one person that does damage to it. And that's the reason why only one person gets this fruit. So if you're doing this in public servers, this is going to be extremely difficult for you, so I don't really recommend this way of grinding, and there are a bunch of different methods on this list that are slightly better. And another bonus to this raid, it will give you a low amount of 100 fragments if you defeat at least one pirate on it, so it isn't a complete loss even if you don't get the fruit. And a good way I recommend to farm this raid is wait for one to complete and then start a 1 hour 15-minute timer, so you know exactly when the next raid is about to start, so you can start camping the place and you can get started on the raid before any other players can. Okay, so the next food farm secret we got here is the factory raid, and the factory is a place that's located on the second sea island, and I'm sure you all have seen it. It's literally a massive building, you cannot miss it. And the place it's located is at the Kingdom of Rose, and it's pretty close to the cafe. And this raid happens every 1 hour and 30 minutes. So basically how it works is that there's a core inside the factory that has a total of 200,000 health, and every player that rushes in there just has to deal a butt ton of damage to the core, and the person that does the most damage to the core will get a random Blox Fruit. And this is way more fair than the castle on the sea raid because you're actually getting the fruit by damage and not just the person that steals the last kill. If you did at least 10% damage to the core, then you also get a bunch of money, XP, and other drops, and also a 20% chance to get the Acidum rifle. And this is a really good gun, and I definitely recommend it for PvP. You literally don't even need to upgrade it, you just need its skills. And there's actually a pretty cool glitch to get into the factory before the raid even starts, and the way you do that is obviously using the flash step glitch. All you have to do is walk up to the entrance, turn your camera properly, and just click the flash step button, and boom, you're in. And this is exactly where the core is located, dead center of the building. And once that raid starts, just make sure you pummel it with all your abilities. Alright, the next method we got is a pretty obvious method, and this is trading. And depending on how you do it, you could end up losing a bunch of fruits or gaining a butt ton of them. You just need to know the right way to trade. And the special thing about trading in this game is that you don't only trade fruits with each other, you can also trade game passes. And the places you can trade in the game is at the cafe on the second sea and at the mansion on the third sea. You're gonna notice these tables with chairs on the map, and this is the place you trade at. You just have to sit down on one, and the person you want to trade with has to sit down on the other side. And some things you should know about trading is that you cannot have a total price difference of over 40%, which means you can't really trade a kilo fruit for a dough fruit. And the reason the devs added this is so you can't really just give an overpowered fruit to your noob friend that just joined the game. And just to make sure that fruits are being traded semi-fairly and that people don't get scammed fully. But in my opinion, there are some fruits that say they're worth a lot, but they really aren't in my book. Like in my opinion, I think the magma fruit is way better than the gravity, but the gravity fruit costs way more and has a higher trading value, which doesn't make any sense to me because the magma fruit has an awakening, making it one of the best grinding fruits in the whole game. Only second to the Buddha in my opinion. You can trade up to 5 times every 8 hours, and you can actually bypass this method by giving fruits to your alt account and trading from that. So if I were you, I would just stick to the limit. Overall, trading is a really good method to get fruits if you're smart with it, and if you guys are looking to trade, I recommend you use Discord servers. And speaking of Discord servers, you should join mine down in the description. Okay, so let's go on to the next fruit farm secret. Alright, next up we got another sea event, and this one is called the Shipmate, and it's one out of the 4 sea events that can happen in the second and third sea. And for this specific one, it works in both seas. This sea event was added to the game in Update 17 Part 2, and the way it works is that when you're just sailing your boat across the water, a bunch of ships will spawn in. A barrage ship and 2 normal ships. The barrage ships will always have way more HP than the 2 basics, so if you want to start out the raid, I recommend you get the basic ships out of the way first. And there's 2 different ways this raid can end. 1, you destroy all their ships, or 2, your boat sinks. And keep in mind, only area of damage attacks work on it, so I definitely recommend the Awakened Magma for this. It'll make this raid 10 times easier. Another thing I recommend is having the Shark Race. This will make it really easy because even when you fall in water, you won't really take any damage. But just make sure you at least have the V2 or V3 version of it. And if you have the V4, way better. These raids will literally be a joke to you. And once you complete defeating all the ships, it's actually not guaranteed that you will get a Blox Fruit. You have around a 10 to 20% chance of getting a random fruit. So this isn't really the best way to grind fruits, but there are worse ways on this list, trust me. And even if you don't get the fruit, you get a 50 fragments drop from each basic ship and 100 fragments drop from the barrage ship. So even if you don't get fruits, it's still a pretty decent way to get your hands on some fragments. So the next method to grind fruits is actually the simplest one on this list, and it's just simply picking up fruits. And this is pretty self-explanatory. You just walk around the map and you just pick up a bunch of fruits. But let me tell you guys some secrets about this that'll make your fruit grinding life a little bit easier. A fruit spawns into the game every 1 hour, and on weekends this timer is 45 minutes. Because the Blox Fruits devs know that most people are playing on the weekends. But you actually have no way of knowing where on the map the fruits spawn. So if you're serious about grinding fruits, then I recommend you guys to get the Fruit Notifier Game Pass, because this notifier literally tells you exactly where the fruit is. Well, not exactly, just tells you how far away from it. And if you have more than 5 IQ, you should be able to find your way over to that fruit. Downside to this game pass is that it obviously costs a butt ton of Robux, literally 2,700. And if you're grinding, I also recommend you guys to be on the first sea because it's the smallest out of all the 3 seas. Only downside to this, I would say, is that if other players have the game pass, then they might be able to get to the fruit faster than you. So if you're doing this, I recommend public servers that have a low amount of people, because if you do this in a private server, then the fruit spawning times are increased by a butt ton, and this is to prevent hackers and exploiters from just grinding fruits super fast. Overall, this is a pretty solid way to grind some fruits, but I definitely recommend a bunch of other secrets on this list. So the next method we got on this list is literally the most obvious one here, the Bloxfruit dealer himself. And this is an NPC that you literally cannot miss. He spawns in at the Pirate Starter Island, the Marine Starter Island, Middletown, Dressrosa Docks, the Cafe on the second sea, Mansion on the third sea, and Port Town on the third sea. And this guy is pretty self-explanatory. He will always have a minimum of 3 different fruits in stock, and if you talk to him, you can either buy the fruits from him for money or for Robux. But I recommend money because you don't really want to spend Robux on this. But if you do end up buying the fruit with Robux, then you get it permanently, and you can switch out to it whenever you want. Overall, a pretty solid NPC, and I definitely recommend this guy if you're looking for a specific fruit. Next up, we got the Bloxfruit Gotcha, and this guy was previously known as the Bloxfruit's dealer's cousin. He's kind of like the Bloxfruit dealer, but a little bit different, and you'll see why in a second. So the places this guy spawns in are at the jungle on the first sea, the cafe at the second sea, and at the mansion on the floating turtle in the third sea. And the way he works is you just walk up to him and you pay him a certain amount of money, and he'll give you a physical version of any random fruit in the game. And the amount of money you have to pay him depends on your level. If you're level 50, then you gotta pay him 32,000 belly, but if you're max level 2,450, 50, then you gotta pay him almost 400,000 belly. And also, if you have Roblox Premium, then these costs are reduced for you. And obviously, it's pretty hard to get the exact fruit of your choice, so if you're looking for a specific fruit, then I recommend the Bloxfruit dealer. But then again, you could just roll this guy whenever you want, because who knows, you just might end up getting a dough fruit. You'll never know until you try. In this video, I'm going to be telling you about everything you need to know about the first sea and the fastest way to level up in it. Okay, so the first island you actually spawn in on the first sea depends on which team you pick. If you pick pirates, then you spawn in at the starter island, and if you pick marines, you spawn in at the marine starter island. Let's start off with the pirate starter island. So there's literally only one quest on this island, and this guy right here gives it to you. And once you equip the quest, he tells you to kill 5 bandits, and once you kill those bandits a bunch of times, you'll be able to go on to the next island. And on the marine starter island, it's the exact same thing, but instead of killing bandits, you actually have to kill NPCs called trainees. These trainees do 3.2 damage per hit, and they have a total of 100 health. And for beginners, this might be kind of a challenge, so make sure you don't run into their hits too much. And the person that gives you the quest on the marine starter island is the marine leader. And once you complete the quest, you get 300 XP along with 350 belly. And this is really good for starting off. And it lets you buy some of the most essential items for the first sea. So the next island you're going to be heading to once you're done with the starter islands is called the jungle. And this is where the game starts to get serious. The jungle is for players that are from level 10 to 30. And you have a total of 3 different quests at this island. The first quest you do is monkeys, and you have to kill a total of 5 of them. And the level requirement for this quest is 10. The monkeys each have a total of 170 HP, and they do around 10 damage per hit. And this is where you're going to notice that you start dying quite a bit, so this is probably where you want to upgrade your defense stats. And the rewards for completing the monkey quest is 2,300 XP along with 800 belly. The next quest you have at the island is the gorillas. The gorillas are just basically stronger monkeys. They have a total of 220 HP, and they do around 14 damage per hit. The level requirement to fight the gorillas is 15, and once you complete the quest, you get a total of 4,500 XP along with 1,200 belly. And finally, we got the first boss in the game, and this is the Gorilla King. The Gorilla King is a level 25 boss who's located at the second part of the jungle island. And since he is a boss, he's actually pretty powerful. He has a total of 950 HP and does 27 punch damage and 73 ground slam damage. And ground slam is one of his abilities, and it's really powerful. And that's what makes fighting this boss really difficult for beginners. But if you do manage to kill him, then you get a total of 7,000 XP along with 2,000 belly. So moving on to the next island, you actually don't really have any quests at this island, but it is an island where a bunch of stuff is located in the first sea. And this is called Middletown because it's literally at the center of the first sea. And the NPCs that are located on this island are the boat dealer, the luxury boat dealer, the Bloxfruit dealer, the weapons dealer who sells you a bunch of guns. And there's only one NPC that actually spawns here, but he's not required for any quests, and he's called the Saw. And he spawns in every hour and 15 minutes, and once he spawns in, you get a huge message on your screen saying the Saw has spawned. You have 15 minutes to defeat him and possibly get a rare reward. And the reward the game is talking about is the Shark Saw. And this is really only good for people that are new to the first sea, because once you get more advanced quests and buy some better weapons, this sword is kind of useless, and there are much better ones out there in the first sea. Alright, the next island where we resume on quests is the Pirate Village. The Pirate Village is an island that's located pretty close to Middletown, and it's for players that go from level 30 to level 60. And there's 3 different quests that you can take on this island. The first one is for pirates. They have a total of 525 HP, and they dish out a decent amount of damage. And you have to be at least level 35 to equip the quest to defeat a pirate. And once you clear with the quest, you get 13,000 XP along with 3,000 belly. The next NPC located at this island are the brutes, and they're really far away from the quest dealer, so when you're doing this quest, I recommend you just kill the pirates. And the level requirement for the brutes quest is 40, and each brute has a total of 675 HP, and they do around 41 to 46 damage per hit. Once you finish, you get 3,500 belly along with 22,000 XP. And finally, we're moving on to the boss of this island, Bobby the Clown. And this boss has a total of 1,775 HP and does 60 damage per hit. And to equip the quest for the boss, you have to be at least level 55. And once you complete the quest, you get 8,000 belly along with 45,000 XP. And this boss is actually the first devil fruit NPC you're going to come across. He has the chop fruit, which means you can't do any damage to him with swords. So if you want to destroy him, you just got to use your fighting styles or your fruit. So the next island after the pirate village is the desert, and this is for players that go from level 60 to level 90. And this island only has 2 different quests, and the first one is for desert bandits. They have a total of 900 health and do 41 damage per hit. The level requirement to accept this quest is 60, and once you complete the quest, you get 4,000 belly along with 45,000 XP. These enemies use a cutlass as their weapon, so this is one of the first enemies in the game that use swords, so be prepared when you fight them. The next quest is for desert officers, and each one has a total of of 1100 HP and they deal around 47 to 49 damage per hit. To accept this quest, you have to be at least level 75, and once you complete it, you get 4500 belly along with 65,000 XP. And once again, these NPCs are located really far away from the quest giver, so if you're farming them, I just recommend you guys do the bandits. You'll be able to level up way faster. So the next island we got is the Frozen Village, and this island is for people that go from level 90 to level 120, and this one actually has 4 different quests, but we'll get to the last one later. For now, I'm going to be telling you about the Snow Bandit. So the Snow Bandits are NPCs that are located pretty close to the quest giver. Each one has a total of 1450 HP and they do around 61 damage per hit, and these guys use katanas as their weapon. To accept the quest, you have to be at least level 90, and once you complete it, you get 5000 belly along with 90,000 XP. The next NPCs on this island are the snowmen. The snowmen are actually pretty weird. They don't actually look like snowmen. I mean, they have like trees growing out of them, which is pretty weird, and they also look a bit creepy. To accept their quest, you have to be at least level 100. They have a total of 1700 HP and they do around 67 damage per hit. Once you complete the quest for these guys, you get 5500 belly along with 150,000 XP. And finally, the boss for this island, it's the Yeti. The Yeti is actually a decently powerful boss for the start of the first sea. It has a total of 4000 HP and does around 135 damage per hit, making it pretty powerful. You have to be at least level 105 to accept the quest for this big guy, and once you finish him off, you get 220,000 XP along with 10,000 belly. He also drops Yeti fur, but you won't be able to use that until later. So the next island you're going to be moving on to is Marine Fortress. Marine Fortress is a really huge island and you literally cannot miss it. This is for people that are from level 120 to level 150. And starting off, the first enemy on this island is the Chief Petty Officer. This NPC has a total of 2300 health and does 95 damage per hit. And these guys actually dual wield swords, so be careful of them. To accept their quest, you have to be at least level 120, and once you defeat them, you get 6000 belly along with 225,000 XP. Next NPC is the Vice Admiral, and this guy is another boss. You literally just have one normal quest on this island. He has a total of 4150 HP and does around 140 to 160 damage per hit. He also dual wields swords just like the petty officers, and the rewards from the quest for defeating this guy are 15,000 belly along with 415,000 XP. And this guy also drops the Vice Admiral's code, which gives you 200 energy along with 20% extra boost to your melee attacks. So it's a pretty solid accessory if you're starting off. So the next island you're actually going to be moving on to is a pretty cool island. It's called Skylands, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's literally floating above in the sky. This island is for people that are level 150 to level 190. And you also got 2 quests for this place. The first one is the Sky Bandit. And these guys are actually the first NPCs in the game which have a race. And that's the Angel race, obviously, because you're in Skylands. Each one has a total of 2550 HP and they deal around 113 to 118 damage per hit. To accept the quest for these guys, you have to be at least level 150. And once you defeat them, you get 7000 belly along with 315,000 XP. The next quest we got in this place is the Dark Masters. And these guys can be found on the 3rd island at Sky Islands. Each one has a total of 2775 HP and they deal around 160 damage per hit. To accept the quest for these guys, you have to be at least level 175. And the rewards you get for this is 450,000 XP along with 7,500 belly. And that's pretty much it for the lower part of Sky Islands, but we'll get to the upper part later. Alright, moving on, we got the prison, and this one is actually a pretty interesting location because you actually have 2 different quest givers here. And this island is for people that go from level 190 to level 250. The very first NPC that you fight at this place is the prisoner. I mean, it's literally a prison. What did you expect? To fight these guys, you need to be at least level 190, and each one has a total of 2840 HP, and they do around 130 damage per hit. And the rewards for killing these guys is 550,000 XP along with 7,000 belly. Next up, we got the dangerous prisoners, and these guys are basically prisoners, but they're more dangerous, I guess. Each one has a total of 3000 XP and they do around 142 damage per hit. To fight these guys, you have to be at least level 210. And once you complete the quest, you get 780,000 XP along with 7,500 belly. But that's just from the first quest giver. Moving on to the next one, it's literally just bosses. You don't get to kill any other normal NPCs at this island. And the first one from this new quest giver is the Warden. The Warden is a boss. He has a total of 8,600 HP, and he does around 130 to 158 damage per hit. And to accept this quest, you have to be at least level 220. And once you complete the quest, you get 850 XP along with 6,000 belly. Next boss is the Chief Warden, and he's exactly what he sounds like. He's just a better warden. He has a total of 10,400 HP, and he does around 380 to 389 damage per hit. You have to be at least level 230 to accept the quest for this guy, and once you complete that, you get 1 million XP along with 10,000 belly. And you also have a 5 to 10% chance of getting the Warden sword, which is a pretty decent sword for the first sea. And finally, the last boss of the prison, Swan. Swan is a level 240 boss, and he can also be found on some other seas, but this is the weaker version of him. He has a total of 11,700 HP and does around 230 damage per hit. He can also drop you the pink coat accessory when you defeat him, and it's pretty decent, I would say. Once you complete the quest to kill him, you get 15,000 belly along with 1.6 million XP. Did I also mention that he has the spider fruit, which is a pretty solid fruit, so he's going to be pretty difficult to fight against if you don't have a fruit of your own. Moving on to the next location, this one is called Coliseum, and the level for this island is 250 to 300, and there's only 2 quests here. The first one is called Toga Warriors, and these guys have a total of 3,000 health, and they do around 169 damage per hit. To accept the quest to fight these guys, you need to be at least level 250, and once you defeat them, you get 7,000 belly along with 1.1 million XP. And these guys are also pretty solid fighters, so it's going to be a huge jump from the prison. Just make sure you're prepared when you fight them. Next NPCs you fight at this place are called gladiators. To fight these guys, you have to be at least level 275, and they have a total of 3,375 HP. The damage they do is unknown, but it is way more than the Toga Warriors. Once you finish the quest for these guys, you get a total of 1,300,000 XP along with 7,500 belly, and they're pretty solid fighters, so just make sure you're prepared for this island. Alrighty, so the next island we got on the list is the Magma Village, and this is for people that are from level 300 to level 375. And this island actually has 2 different quests along with a boss quest, and the first one is the Military Soldier. The Military Soldiers are one of the first NPCs in the game that actually use the Hockey ability, which means even if you have an elemental fruit, they can fully do damage to you. These guys use a Katana as a weapon. They have a total of 3,500 health each, and they do around 200 damage per hit. Once you complete the quest for these guys, you get a total of 1,700,000 XP along with 8,250 belly. The next NPCs are the military spies, and they're a little bit stronger than the soldiers. These guys also have hockey, but instead of using katanas, they just use their fists. Each one of these guys has a total of 3,025 HP, and they deal around 148 damage per hit. Once you complete the quest, you get a total of 2 million XP along with 8,500 belly. And finally, we got the boss of the island, and who better than the Magma Admiral himself? It fits so perfectly. The Magma Admiral is the boss at the Magma Island. This boss has a total of 15,000 HP and does around 284 damage per hit. And he also has some of the abilities of the old Magma fruit, but it's not anything anyone can use now. He has the Z move along with the X move. It's pretty weird that they don't update bosses to the most recent fruit. Overall, he's a really solid boss, and obviously the strongest boss you're gonna face by far. And this boss actually has a chance of dropping the Magma fruit along with the Refined Musket. But the Refined Musket only has a 10% chance, so it's gonna be really difficult to get. I definitely do not recommend grinding this boss just to get that. Next island we're moving to is not actually an island, it's the underwater city, and this is for people that go from level 375 to level 450. And the first NPC you fight at this island are the Fishman Warriors. These guys use katanas as their weapon, and you have to be at least level 375 to accept their quest. Each NPC has a total of around 4,200 health, and they do around 200 damage per hit. But once you finish the quest for these guys, it gives you 3,050,000 XP, and you also get 8,750 belly. Pretty solid if you ask me. The next NPCs at this island are the Fishman Commandos, and each of these guys has a total of 4,500 HP, and they do around 350 to 361 damage per hit. To accept the quest for these guys, you have to be at least level 400. Once you complete the quest, you get 3,350,000 XP along with 9,000 belly. But that's not all there is at this island. You also have a boss who's called the Fishman Lord. This guy's a level 425 boss, and obviously you have to be that level to accept his quest. And this boss is actually pretty unique. He has 2 different phases. His first phase has 18,000 HP and his second phase also has 18,000 HP. And once you complete killing him in his first phase, he just transforms into his second one. So overall, you have to do around 36,000 damage to kill him. He also does 470 damage per hit, so he's definitely one of the hardest bosses by far. But once you kill him, you get 4,250,000 XP along with 15,000 belly. And his weapon's literally a trident, which he has a 10% chance of dropping. And this trident is also pretty cool. It has a water pulse ability where you do damage to everything that's next to you. And the other ability is literally a grappling hook, and it's really cool and pretty fun to play around with. Alright, the next island is Skylands, and you might be thinking we already covered it, but remember when I said we would come back to it? Well, this is the upper part of Skylands. That's right, it has two different parts, and the upper part is a way higher level requirement. But the upper part has a 450 to 625 level requirement, and this is another one of the places just like the prison, which has two different quest givers. So the first people you're going to be fighting when you show up at this place are the Shandas. To accept their quest, you have to be at least level 475. Each one has a total of 5,000 HP, and they deal around 250 damage per hit. Once you complete their quest, you get 5,000 XP along with 9,000 belly. So after the Shandas, we got the Whisper boss, and this is a level 500 boss who uses a bazooka as his weapon. So you already know he's bad because he uses a gun. He has a total of 17,500 HP, and he does around 950 damage per hit. The next NPCs you fight are the Royal Squad. These guys have a level requirement of 525. You have to defeat 8 of them to complete the quest, but that's going to be pretty hard considering they have a total of 5,425 HP along with 220 damage per hit. But it's definitely worth it because the rewards are 5,800,000 XP along with 9,500 belly. Next NPCs are the Royal Soldiers. To fight these guys, you have to be at least level 550. Each one has a total of 5,650 health and they deal around 260 damage per hit. And the rewards for these guys is 6,300,000 XP along with 9,750 belly. Moving on to the final boss of Upper Sky, the Thunder God NPC. He has a total of 23,000 health and he does around 771 damage per hit. But his damage also kind of varies because he actually has a Rumble Fruit along with the Pole first form. And for a first C boss to have this is crazy. And once you kill him, you have a chance of getting the Rumble Fruit along with the Pole's first form. And once you complete the quest for this guy, you get 8 million XP along with 20,000 belly. Alright, next up we got the final island of the first sea, and this is called the Fountain City, and I'm sure you've all seen this. You literally can't miss it. It's massive. And this island is for people that go from level 625 to level 700. And the first quest you equipped on this island is for the Gallery Pirates. The Gallery Pirates are really solid NPCs that have a total of 5,625 health, and they deal around 209 to 217 damage per hit. Once you complete the quest for these guys, you get a total of 7,500,000 XP along with 10,000 belly. The next NPCs are called the Gallery Captains. These guys are found pretty close to the Gallery Pirates, but obviously since they're captains, they're a lot stronger. Each one has a total of 10,000 HP and they deal around 180 to 230 damage per hit. And once you complete the quest for these guys, you get 10,000 belly along with 8,500,000 XP. And finally, we're moving on to the boss, the Cyborg. Cyborg is one of the strongest bosses in the first sea, if not for what comes next. He's a level 675 boss, and once you kill him, you have a 2.5% chance of him dropping you the Cool Shade, and this is a really solid accessory. He has a total of 43,000 health and he does around 600 to 700 damage per hit. That's really difficult to fight if you ask me. And once you complete the quest for this guy, you get 10 million XP along with 20,000 belly. But that's it for the Fountain City. Alright, next up we got the final boss of the first sea. This is the Ice Admiral, and he's a level 700 boss. And the way you fight him is by doing a really long quest to capture the Swan boss, who actually ends up escaping into the second sea, and that's where you end up fighting him again. But anyways, let's talk a bit about this Ice Admiral boss. He has a total of 28,500 HP, and he has the old unawakened Ice Fruit, and he just punches you to do damage to you. And you can actually fight this boss only one time, and that's when you get a special key to open a place at the Winter Island. And once you head in there, you can just pummel him until you kill him. And once you do that, you'll actually get access to the second sea. But if you ever try to fight him again, you literally won't be able to do any damage to him because it's just a one-time quest. In this video, I'm going to be telling you about every single boat in Blox Fruits, as well as some secret boats that you might have not known existed. Okay, so the very first boat that we got on this list is called a Dinghy, and I'm sure you all know what it is. It is a free boat in the game, and you can buy it from an NPC called the Boat Dealer. And this is the major NPC when it comes to getting boats in the game. The Dinghy is the second smallest boat in the game and the slowest in the whole game, and it can literally only hold 2 people. And the appearance of the boat is that it is a half cylinder, it's a brown boat, and has a very small square square mast. And despite being free, this boat is overshadowed by the sloop boat, which we will be covering later on this list. But a cool thing about the dinghy is that back in the day, there used to be a glitch where you could lure over bosses and make them sit in the back of your dinghy, and then they wouldn't be able to move. They literally couldn't get up, and then you could just deal a butt ton of damage to them while they're basically sitting AFK in your boat. And the amount of health that this boat has is 100, so if someone else attacks it, then you're pretty much dead. So the next boat that we got on this list is called the Sloop, and this is a boat that costs a total of 300 belly to buy, but that's only if you are a pirate. If you're a marine, then you can buy this boat for the cheap price of 150 belly, and that's literally just half the price. And this boat is a really good boat, and if you're looking for a cheap and fast boat without having to spend too much belly on it, then this is definitely the boat that you want to go for. It can fit a total of 3 people at the max, and it's the second cheapest boat, and it can be bought from the boat dealer, obviously, just like most other boats in the game. And this boat is way faster than the Dinghy from before. You'll see that this is a boat that's being used the most often. Another cool fact about this boat that I should mention is that it moves at a different speed depending on whether you're a pirate or a marine. If you're a pirate, then this boat moves slightly slower, and if you're a marine, this moves slightly faster. And the reason for this is that it lets people that are marines catch up to pirates, because I guess that's how the game's supposed to work. The next boat we got on the list is called Basic. Yup, that's literally the name of the boat. The Basic boat is a boat that has very medium speed. It has 2 cannons and 2 passenger seats, along with the captain, so it basically has the same amount of space as the Sloop from before. And this boat has a total of 2,000 health, which makes it pretty hard to shoot down during raids. But one thing to mention is that the Basic is not as fast as the Sloop, but it does have a lot more health, and it has cannons to protect itself against other boats. So if you want to know which boat you should get on, it depends on what type of situation you're looking for. If you're looking for a situation where you're fighting against people, then this is probably the better boat. But if you're trying to catch up to someone, then you should probably stick to the Sloop. This boat costs a total of 1,000 belly to buy, so it costs a lot more than the Sloop, literally like 3 times more. So choose wisely. Okay, so now we're getting to the better ships on this list. So now we got the Brigade. The Brigade is one of the strongest ships in the whole of Blox Fruits. It has a total of 11 flags, 4 cannons, and 2,500 health. And if you're using a cannon, you can completely control the trajectory by sitting and clicking where you want it to shoot. And just like most ships in the game, you can buy this from the boat dealer NPC for a total of 4,000 belly. This seems a bit expensive, but trust me, it's definitely worth the price. And the requirements to get this are actually different depending on whether you're a marine or a pirate. And yup, this is the first boat in the game that literally has a quest for you to unlock it. If you're a pirate, then all you have to simply do is defeat 3 different marines. They can be any level. And if you're a marine, you guessed it, you have to kill 3 different pirates. And some quick trivia about this boat. This is arguably one of the largest ships in the whole of Blox Fruits. I doubt you're finding a ship any bigger. And it's often used for sea beast hunting along with the flower ship and the swan ship. But we'll get to those later. Alrighty, the next boat that we got on this list is called the Speedboat, and I doubt a lot of people in this game even know that this boat exists because you rarely see it in game. The Speedboat is a free boat, but the only NPC that you can get this from is the luxury boat dealer. However, to access the luxury boat dealer, you actually have to buy the Faster Boats Game Pass. It's a special game pass that gives you access to faster boats in the game, like the name suggests. We'll talk about all the boats you get access to later, but all you need to know is that the Speedboat is a free boat that comes with this game pass. Has a total of 1,200 HP, so it's not that easy to take down. It's a steel boat with a black sail and has light brown seats. It has 2 different seats so you can control it and you can get a friend to sit in it. And another cool thing about this boat is that when it was first added to the game, it was called Rocket Boost instead of a speedboat, but I guess they changed the name because Rocket Boost for a boat's name literally makes no sense. But anyways, let's head over to the next luxury boat. So the boat that we got next up is called the Enforcer. The Enforcer is literally the smallest boat in Blox Fruits. However, it is literally the fastest boat in the game. It has only 1 seat, so you're basically the only person who can drive on it, but you can easily bypass this by getting your friends to just stand on the boat. And make sure you tell them not to move, because if they move, then they're just gonna fall off right into the water. And this boat can obviously be bought from the luxury boat dealer because it is literally a crazy boat. It costs a total of 1,000 belly and has a total of 1,000 HP. So despite its small size, it won't even go down that fast in a raid. To get the Enforcer, you obviously gotta have the Faster Boats Game Pass. Then all you have to do is simply spawn it in using the luxury boat dealer. Now let's talk about some pros and cons about this boat. This is the fastest boat in the game, and this is obviously also a great alternative for travel if you do not have a flight move, a water walking fruit, or the shark race, because how else are you gonna get around? And this is very useful for the race V4 puzzle because you'll need it to find the Mirage Island. But then again, this costs Robux, and I know a lot of people in this game don't have a bunch of Robux spare to spend, and that kind of makes this pay to win. But if you have the Robux V-Bucks for it, then it should be no problem for you. And another thing I should mention about this boat is that it's kind of bad for sea beast hunting, and the reason for that, its HP is really low, so the sea beast is going to destroy the boat in like 2 seconds. And also, the last thing is that it has no cannons, but that doesn't really matter because it's a boat that specializes in speed. The next boat that we got on this list is called the Swan Ship, and this boat, like the name suggests, you can get it by defeating the Dawn Swan boss. And those of you guys wondering who the Dawn Swan boss is, this is a level 1000 boss, which you need to defeat to evolve any race to V3 as well as getting to the 3rd sea. And this boss has a total of 52,000 HP and does around 1,300 damage per hit. So he's a pretty powerful boss, but once you defeat him, you can get access to this boat. And obviously this boat has a 100% chance of dropping, but you have to deal at least 10% damage to the boss when you fight him. You can't just do like 2% damage and have your friend finish him off. That doesn't work. To spawn this boat in, you have to pay a total of 5,000 belly, and it's the same speed as the other one. This boat has a total of 2,500 HP and 4 cannons. It's also shaped like a black swan, and it also has 2 little wings on the side. But you can only spawn this boat from the luxury boat dealer, so you're gonna have to have the game pass even after you defeat the boss. And in my opinion, this boat is one of the coolest looking boats in the whole game, because the style is just really good. Alright, moving on, let's talk about the flower ship like I mentioned before. This is actually a pretty special ship, and the way that you get it is also pretty unique. The way you get it is by finding this cyborg NPC who's located behind the factory at the Kingdom of Rose on the 2nd sea. And once you talk to him, you can buy the boat for a total of 1,500 fragments. And once you do that, you can spawn in the ship anytime from the luxury boat dealer for a total of 5,000 belly. This boat has a total of 2,500 HP, has 4 cannons, and there's a pretty small Easter egg that's hidden in the highest flag. And the cool thing about the ship is that I can fire at better angles than any other ships due to the cannons that are in the front. So you can literally be driving at someone and keep shooting at them, which is something you can't do with most other ships. Cool thing about the ship is that the flower ship and the Swan ship have relatively the same stats, except for the front cannon on this ship, which in my opinion makes this a little bit better. And this is literally the only boat in the game that you have to pay fragments to get. And back in the day, this ship used to have red paint, but it was later changed to orange because it looks a lot more refined. Okay, so before we get to the final and coolest boat that's on this list, let's talk a little bit about the boat spawning NPCs. Obviously, you know that there's the boat dealer and the luxury boat dealer, but have you ever wondered where they spawn? Well, for the boat dealer, that's actually pretty easy. He literally spawns in on every single island in the whole game, except for the prison on the 1st sea, the Jean Look Island, which a lot of you might be wondering what that is. Well, it's the island that spawns the mob leader on the 1st sea. And the last island that this NPC does not spawn at is Usopp's island. Other than that, he literally spawns at every single island, so you can get a boat from this guy at any time. Moving on to the luxury boat dealer. The only islands this guy does not spawn at are all the same islands as the previous one, so he doesn't spawn at Usopp's island, he doesn't spawn at the Jean Look Island, or at the prison. And the bad thing about this guy is that he actually does not spawn at the jungle either, and in my opinion, the jungle is one of the most crucial islands in the 1st sea because that's where the Bloxfruit Gotcha is. So no matter what level you are, if you're in the 1st sea, you're going to be rolling this guy a lot. And if you have the luxury boats game pass, then it's kind of a waste if you can't access the boat dealer there. Anyways, enough about the dealers. Let's talk about the final and coolest boat in the whole game. Alright, the next boat that we got on this list is the Sleigh, and this is the coolest boat in the game in my opinion. And it's also the 2nd fastest boat, only second to the Enforcer. But the cool thing about this boat is about the NPC that you buy from. That's right, you buy from Santa Claus himself for a total of 1,000 candies. And obviously you can only buy this boat during the Christmas events. And once you buy it for 1,000 candies, you can spawn it in any time from the luxury boat dealer for 5,000 belly. This ship has a total of 1,000 HP, and that's really good considering how fast it is. Let's talk about some pros and cons. This is the 2nd fastest boat in the game, and that's unlikely to change. It's small enough to avoid most of the cannonballs that your enemies will try and shoot at you. It's also a pretty good alternative for travel if you don't have any fruits or the shark race. And unlike the Enforcer boat, this actually does not require any game pass. You just simply have to find the NPC and spawn it in. Another pretty cool thing about this boat is that it actually plays music while you drive on it. And did I mention it also has 3 different seats? So I'm not actually sure which boat is better, the Enforcer or this one. Let me know down in the comments. However, the one downside is that it does cost more than the Enforcer, but that doesn't really matter because you can hold 3 people and the Enforcer cannot. Another bad thing is that it does not have any cannons, so if someone's shooting cannonballs at you, you actually have no way of fighting against them. And probably the biggest downside is that you cannot get this boat once the Christmas event ends. So the opening to get this boat is literally only once a year. So if you guys want to get this boat, make sure you stay on Blox Fruits for Christmas. In this video, I'm going to be giving you a complete guide to everything in the 2nd sea, as well as some tips and tricks to help you get to the 3rd one as fast as possible. So soon as you enter the 2nd sea, you're going to be introduced to a place called the Kingdom of Rose, and here you actually have 2 different quest givers. The first one is for the Raider. This is a level 700 enemy. It has a total of 6,500 HP and does around 234 damage per hit. As far as its weapon goes, it's not that powerful, but it is really strong and does a lot of damage. The rewards for finishing the quest for the Raiders is 8,750,000 XP along with 10,250 belly. Next up, we got the mercenaries. These NPCs are level 725. They have a total of 6,725 health each, and they do around 342 damage per hit. And once you complete the quest for these guys, you get 9,750,000 XP, along with 10,500 belly. Next up, we got the boss for the first quest, and this is the diamond boss. And obviously, don't confuse it with the diamond fruit, it's literally a boss. This boss has a total of 43,750 HP, and does around 100 to 500 damage per attack. If you finish the quest for this guy, you get 12,500,000 XP along with 25,000 belly. So that's a pretty good amount for starting off in the second sea. So moving on to the next quest giver, the first quest he gives you is the Swan Pirates. Each Swan Pirate has a total of 7,000 HP and they deal around 366 damage per hit. And they also have an attack which deals 400. So these guys are pretty powerful. To accept the quest for these guys, you have to be at least level 775, and the rewards for the quest is 11,500,000 XP along with 10,750 belly. Next NPCs are called the factory staff. Each one has a total of 7,400 HP and does around 648 damage per hit, which is really overpowered. To accept the quest for these guys, you have to be at least level 800, and once you kill them, you get a total of 13 million XP along with 11,000 belly. Oh, can you believe every NPC I've mentioned so far is located on one massive island? That's pretty crazy. And we got another boss, and this guy's called Jeremy. The Jeremy boss is level 850. This guy has a total of 34,250 health, and he does around 975 to 1,100 damage per hit. Once you finish the quest for him though, you get a total of 16 million XP along with 25,000 belly. He also has a 10% chance of dropping you the black spiky coat, which is a pretty decent accessory to start off with in the second sea. Alright, the next island you move on to in the second sea is called the Green Zone, and you literally cannot miss it. It's literally a huge island with a bunch of vines sprouting from it, and these vines are massive. So the first NPCs you're going to be fighting on this island are the Marine Lieutenants, and to fight these guys you have to be at least level 875. Each of these guys has a total of 7,775 HP, and they do around 410 damage per hit. And the rewards after completing this quest is 15 million XP along with 11,250 belly. Next up, we got the Marine Captains, and they're just a stronger version of the Lieutenants. They literally use the same swords as well. Each of these guys has a total of 8,500 health, and they deal around 614 to 683 damage. And to accept the quest for these guys, you have to be at least level 900. And the reward for completing the quest is 16,500,000 XP along with 11,500 belly. Then we got the boss of the Green Zone, Vegeta. Vegeta is a pretty overpowered boss for starting off in the second sea. This guy has a total of 40,000 health, and he does around 1,000 to 1,100 damage per hit. He also has two of the moves of the old gravity fruit. He has the gravity push ability, and he has the meteor rain. And meteor rain, in my opinion, is the more annoying one to deal with. He just spawns in a bunch of meteors all around you, and they're pretty hard to dodge. But that's it for the Green Zone. Let's go to the next island. So the next island we're going on to is the Graveyard Island, and this island is for people that go from level 950 to 1,000. The first quest you accept at this area is for zombies. To fight them, you have to be at least level 950, and the quest is to defeat 8 of them. You literally can't miss them. I mean, they look pretty zombie-like, and each zombie has a total of 8,550 HP, and they do around 320 damage per hit. Once you complete the quest, you get a total of 11,750 belly along with 9 million XP. Moving on, we got the vampires, and to fight these guys, you have to be at least level 975. And the rewards for killing these guys is 20,500,000 XP along with 12,000 bellies, and they are pretty strong for this island. But that's pretty much it for the Graveyard. Literally just 2 NPCs that you gotta fight. Moving on to the next island, this one is called the Snow Mountain, and it's a huge mountain filled with snow. And on this place, you also got 2 different quests, and the first one is for the Snow Troopers. The Snow Troopers are pretty strong warriors that each have 10,000 HP, and they do around 600 damage per hit. And the weapons they use are dual katanas, so be prepared when you fight them. But if you got the chop food, you got nothing to worry about. To accept the quest for these guys, you have to be at least level 1,000, and once you finish that, you get 22,500,000 XP along with 12,250 belly. Next NPCs here are the Winter Warriors, and these guys use the basic combat style to fight, but don't let that fool you, they're really powerful. Each one has 9,550 HP, and they do 425 damage per hit. And to fight these guys, it's recommended to be at least level 1,050. The rewards for killing all of them is 24 million XP along with 12,500 belly. And that's it for the Snow Mountain. Let's go to the next one. Next island, or islands I should say, is the Hot and Cold. And the reason I said islands is because the island is pretty huge and it's split into a hot and a cold side. Thus the name Hot and Cold. But starting off, we got the Ice Quest Giver, and this is the first quest giver that you have to head to. And the first NPCs you fight are lab subordinates. To fight these guys, you have to be at least level 1,100, and these guys use a pipe as their weapon. Not that strong. But once you finish the quest for these guys, you get 25,500,000 XP along with 12,250 belly. Next, we got the Horned Warriors, and to fight these guys, you have to be at least level 1,125. Once you complete the quest for these guys, you get 27 million XP along with 12,500 belly. And these guys use the Ice Fruit as their weapon. And finally, we got another boss, and this guy's called the Smoke Admiral. To fight him, you have to be at least level 1,150. And obviously, he uses the Smoke Fruit along with the Jite Sword. And once you complete the quest for this guy, you get a total of 32,500,000 XP along with 20,000 belly. Now let's move on to the hot side of the hot and cold island. The first NPCs we got are the Magma Ninjas, and to fight these guys, you have to be at least level 1,175. And the weapons these guys use is a dual-headed blade. And the amount of XP you get from completing this quest is 29 million, so you get a butt ton. And along with 12,250 belly. Next up, we got the Lava Pirates, and to fight these guys, it's recommended to be at least level 1,200. And for completing the quest for these dudes, you get a total of 31 million XP, along with 12,500 belly. And these guys use the Magma Fruit as their weapon. And that's it for the hot and cold islands. Now we're moving on to a place called the Cursed Ship. This is the first location that's actually inside a building. And the Cursed Ship is recommended for levels 1,250 to 1,350. And the first NPCs you fight when you get here are the ship deckhand. These guys each have a total of 11,550 HP, and they do around 675 damage per hit. That makes them pretty powerful. And for the quest, you gotta defeat 8 of them. Once you complete that, you get 12,250 belly along with 33 million XP. Next NPCs we got are the ship engineers. And to fight these guys, it's recommended to be at least level 1,275. And you gotta defeat 8 of them for the quest. And once you complete that, you get 12,500 belly along with 35,500,000 XP. And that's it for the first quest giver here, but there's another one. And for this one, you gotta fight the ship stewards. And to fight these guys, it's recommended to be at least level 1,300. Each of the ship stewards have a total of 12,100 HP, and they do around 965 damage per hit, which makes them pretty overpowered. But once you complete the quest for these guys, you get 12,250 belly along with 37,500,000 XP. Next up, we got the ship officers, and these guys are also pretty strong. Each of them have 12,325 HP, and they do around 1,000 damage per hit. But once you complete the quest for these guys, you get 12,500 belly along with 39,500,000 XP. That definitely makes it worth it. And we also got a boss on the ship who's called the Cursed Captain, but he only has a 1 out of 3 chance to spawn every night at the ship. That makes this guy really hard to farm. And that's pretty much it for the Cursed Ship. Let's go to the next location. Next location we're moving on to is called the Ice Castle, and this is for people that are from level 1,350 to 1,425. And the first NPCs on this island are the Arctic Warriors. Each of these guys has a total of 12,550 HP, and they do around 300 to 500 damage per hit. That seems like pretty low damage, but trust me, they attack pretty fast. Once you complete the quest for these guys, you get 12,250 belly along with 41 million XP. Next NPCs are called the Snow Lurkers. And don't let the fact that these guys use no weapons fool you. They deal a butt ton of damage. And once you complete the quest for them, you get 12,500 belly along with 43 million XP. You got another NPC, and the Awakened Ice Admiral himself. And obviously he uses the Awakened Ice Fruit. And not only that, he can use a total of 3 abilities from that fruit. And this boss is probably one of the most annoying bosses to fight just because of its freeze ability, and you literally can't move once you get caught in it. He also drops the Hidden Key and the Library Key, which are pretty useful for getting stuff like the Rengoku Sword and Death Step. But once you complete the quest for this guy, you get 20,000 belly along with 45 million XP. And that's it for this island. Next island on the list is the Skull Island, and this is a final island for this second sea. First NPCs you encounter at this place are the Sea Soldiers, and once you defeat 8 of them, you get a total of 12,250 belly along with 47 million XP. But that's going to be pretty difficult considering the fact that each one of them has 13,000 to 15,000 HP, and they do around 681 damage per hit. And they also have a chance of dropping Mystic Droplets, which come in handy for later. Next NPCs are called the Water Fighters, and these guys all use Water Kung Fu to fight, making them pretty powerful. Once you complete the quest for them, you get 12,500 belly along with 49 million XP. And next up, we got the final boss for the second sea, the Tidekeeper himself. Tidekeeper is a really overpowered boss. He has a total of 100,000 health, and he does around 1,675 damage per hit. He uses the Dragon Trident as a weapon, and he literally spawns into sea beast to attack you. And to be honest, that's the most annoying part. Like, I can handle one boss, but a whole sea beast? Bro, nah. But once you defeat him, you get 12,500 belly along with 51 million XP, making this whole quest worth it. In this video, I'm going to be telling you about some super secret things for every single sword in Blox Fruits. Okay, so the very first sword that we got on this list is called the Katana, and I'm sure most of you watching should already know about this sword. It's a basic beginner sword that everyone should get when they enter the game. It costs a total of 1,000 belly, and obviously it's a common sword, and you can buy from an NPC called the Sword Dealer at the Pirate Starter Island and the Marine Starter Island. If you want to upgrade the sword to its next level, you have to pay a total of 5 leather and 5 angel wings, and this increases its damage by 30%. This sword has 2 abilities. The X ability is called Quiet Rush, and this is an ability where the user kind of dashes forward, dealing a bunch of strikes to the enemy, locking in place and preventing them from moving. And this ability has a 1 master requirement, so you basically get it as soon as you get the sword. Next ability is called Air Slash, and this also does exactly what it sounds like. You just shoot out a huge air slash and it deals a bunch of damage when it hits the enemy. Overall, this sword is a really good option for beginners. It has low cooldowns, low price, low master requirements, and it's particularly useful for people who don't have a fruit, aka players that are starting off. Alright, the next sword we got on the list is called the Cutlass, and this is very similar to the Katana. I think it's just a reskin of it. This is also a common sword. It costs the exact same amount, which is 1,000 belly, and you also buy it from the exact same NPC, the Sword Dealer. And this also has a V2, which you can upgrade to by getting 5 leather and 5 angel wings, and it increases its damage by 30%. The Cutlass's abilities are exactly the same as the Katana. You have the Quiet Rush ability with the 1 master requirement, and you have an Air Slash ability with a 20 master requirement. Overall, it's basically the same thing. It's good for starters, low cooldowns, low price, very low master requirements, but overall it's a pretty newbie sword, and you want to switch to a different one as soon as possible. Alright, moving on, next up we got the Dual Katana, and this is exactly what it sounds like. It's a katana, but instead of just having 1 katana, you have 2 of them. This is also a common sword, and you can buy it for a total of 12,000 belly. And the NPC you buy it from is called the Sword Dealer of the West, who's located at the Pirate Village in the First Sea. This sword also does have a V2, and to upgrade it to that, you can talk to the blacksmith, and you need to pay him 10 leather and 12 angel wings, and this increases its damage by 30%. This sword also has 2 abilities. First up, we got the Z ability. This one also has a 1 master requirement, just like the previous 2, and this ability is called Whirlwind. What this ability does is unleash a medium long range cone shaped attack that does a bunch of knockback to whatever you hit it with. Next ability has a 30 master requirement, and this one is called Tornado, and it does exactly what it sounds like. It spawns in a pretty small tornado and does a bunch of damage to anyone that gets caught in it. Overall, the sword is an excellent choice for beginners. It has pretty low master requirements, and its Z ability does area of damage, so that makes it pretty good for grinding. But this sword does not break observation, and it has average damage output. Overall, a really good sword to start off with, but switch to a different one as soon as you can. Alrighty, next sword we got on the list is called the Iron Mace. This is an uncommon sword, and you can also buy this from the Sword Dealer of the West, who's also located on the Pirate Village in the First Sea. This Iron Mace costs a total of 25,000 belly to buy, and it's also a pretty good starter sword. This also does have a V2, which you can upgrade to for 10 leather and 12 angel wings, and increases its damage by 30%. You have 2 different moves for this. First up is the Z ability, and this one also has a 1 master requirement, and it's called Mace Smash, and it does exactly what it sounds like. You just smash your Iron Mace into the floor, doing a bunch of AoE damage to anything in front of you, and this move in my opinion is pretty good for grinding. Next up is the X ability. This one has a 30 master requirement, and it's called Killer Combo, and it's kind of similar to the air slash of the Katana, but instead of just doing 1 slash, you do a bunch of slashes, and they deal a little bit more damage than the normal ones, making this pretty good for fighting enemies one-on-one. This sword is a good option for beginners. It's ideal for grinding at low levels. It has very low master requirements, but the bad thing though is that this sword is only really good for close range combat because all of its skills don't actually go long range or medium range either, and also it does have pretty low damage compared to other swords on this list. But overall, a pretty solid sword if you're starting off. Next sword we got on this list is called the Shark Saw, and this is an uncommon sword, and you actually don't really buy this sword from anyone. You get it from an NPC called the Saw, and the only way to get it is by killing him, and the Saw has a 10% chance of dropping this sword. This also does have a V2, which you can upgrade to for 10 leather, and increases the damage by 25%. This Shark Sword has 2 different abilities. The first ability is the Z ability. This one has a 1 master requirement, and it's called Consecutive Slashes, and it does exactly what it sounds like. It just spams a bunch of air slashes, locking the enemy in place and doing a butt ton of damage. Next ability is the X ability, and this one is called Execution. It has a 60 master requirement, and for this one you kind of just spin around, dealing a bunch of damage to everything around you. Overall, this is a good sword for early game farming. It has pretty low master requirements, and all of its moves have a stun effect. But just like the previous one, it has pretty limited range, and I don't really recommend farming the Saw just to get this sword because there's many better swords on this list that you can just save up belly and buy. Overall, a pretty mid sword because you need to kill a boss with a 10% chance of getting it. Next sword, or should I say swords, that we got on the list is the Triple Katana, and this is not 1, not 2, but 3 different katanas as one weapon. And this is an uncommon sword, and you can buy from an NPC called the Sword Dealer of the East, and you have to pay 60,000 belly for it. This sword also has a V2, which you can pay the blacksmith 15 metal scraps along with 15 leather, and increases its damage by 25%. It has 2 different abilities. First up, with the Z ability, it's called Air Slash's Barrage, and it has a 20 mastery requirement. And this is just like the Air Slash ability from the first katana, but instead of shooting off just one air slash, it does 3 different ones, making it do 3 times the damage of the katana. Next ability is called Violent Rush, and this is the X ability of the sword with a 60 mastery requirement. The user lifts all their swords up, dashing forward, leaving a trail of green colored slashes behind them, and does damage to any enemy standing in your way. Good things about this sword is that it's affordable, it's pretty beginner friendly, so you can learn it pretty fast, and it has low mastery requirements for the first seed. But the downsides to it is that it has pretty short range moves, and the Violet Slash ability has a bit of end lag, not really making it suitable for PvP. And it's really not optimal for grinding either, but overall it's still a pretty decent sword. Next up, we don't really have a sword, it's just called the Pipe. And this is a rare sword, and you can buy from an NPC called the Sword Dealer of the East, who's located at the Frozen Village in the first sea. This sword costs a total of 100,000 belly. And it does have a V2, which you can upgrade to by talking to the blacksmith and giving him 12 fishtails along with 10 metal scraps, and increases the damage by 25%. Has 2 different abilities, starting off with the Z ability with a 1 mastery requirement, so you don't even need to grind for this ability. It's called Rage Combo, and it does exactly what it sounds like. You just dash towards your enemy in a fit of rage, and you deal a butt ton of damage to them by swinging your pipe. Next ability is the X ability, and this one is called Earth Smash. It has a 50 mastery requirement, and you just slam your sword into the ground, and it just raises a bunch of rocks, and it deals damage to any enemy that's on those rocks. And not to mention, also sends them flying into the sky, and they have no time to react to this ability. It's super fast. Overall, this sword is pretty good because it does decent damage, it's good at PvP, and it has low mastery requirements. And it also has a fast mobility move, making it pretty hard to dodge. But it does not break observation, and it does not slow down melee attacks. But overall, I would still say it's a pretty decent sword, or should I say pipe. Next sword we got on the list is the Warden sword, and this is a rare sword, and you can get it from an NPC called the Chief Warden. And no, you don't buy it, you have to kill the NPC, and you have a 5 to 10% chance of getting it dropped. This sword has a V2, which you can upgrade to for 12 magma rocks and 10 leather, and it increases the sword's damage by 25%. This sword has 2 different abilities, and first up we got the Z ability. It's called Multi-Target Slash. It has a 35 mastery requirement, and you basically just slam your sword into the floor, dealing damage to everything that's around you, literally a circle of damage. Next ability is called Tornado Slash, and this one has an 80 mastery requirement. You gotta just shoot a tornado flying towards where your cursor is, and it sends the enemy flying into the sky and deals a butt ton of damage to them. This sword is really good for beginners because it has a low mastery requirement, its moves are really fast, and all of its abilities do AoE damage, which makes it pretty good for grinding. But overall, I don't really recommend this sword for bounty hunting just because of the way it works, and it's pretty bad for PvP because it has pretty short range and low damage. Overall, still a solid sword, but I don't recommend grinding the Warden just to get this. Next sword we got on the list is called the Dual-Headed Blade, and this is the first rare sword that we got on the list, and you can buy this from the Master Sword Dealer, who's located at the 4th island of Skylands in the first sea. This sword costs a total of 400,000 belly. Damn, that's pretty expensive for the first sea. And also does have a V2, which you can upgrade by talking to the blacksmith by giving him 12 fishtails and 10 metal scraps, and increases the sword's damage by 25%. Has 2 abilities, but starting off with the Z ability, which has a 20 mastery requirement. It's called Assassinate, and basically what you do is you just dash into a user, dealing a bunch of damage and a butt ton of sword strikes to them. Overall, pretty solid ability. Next ability is the X ability, and this is called Raging Wind with a 100 mastery requirement. And I kid you not, when you use this skill, you literally shoot out 3 miniature tornadoes who just drag your enemy back and deal a butt ton of damage to them. Overall, this sword has decent damage, it doesn't have any end lag on any of its abilities, and no dash on its melee attacks, and also has pretty low mastery requirements. But the bad things are that it has no stun moves, it's bad in the air, and it's pretty bad for later seas, but that's most of the swords in the first sea, so I would say this is overall a pretty decent sword. Next sword we got on the list, and one of my personal favorites, the Soul Cane. This is a rare sword, and you can get it from the Magma Island by talking to the living skeleton NPC, and it costs a total of 750,000 belly. And the way you get it is actually pretty cool. You have to walk through a secret wall on the volcano, and that's where you find the NPC. It also does have a V2, and you get it by paying the blacksmith 5 radioactive rocks along with 20 leather, and it increases the sword's damage by 20%. It has 2 different abilities, starting off with the Z ability. It's called Soul Beam with a 40 mastery requirement, and this one is really cool. You kind of just shoot a beam, dealing a bunch of AoE damage to everything in front of you. And not to mention, that also looks pretty badass. Next ability is the X ability, and this one is called Soul Slashes, and it's very similar to the Katana's air slash ability. But instead of just shooting one air slash, you shoot a butt ton of them, dealing a bunch of damage to everything in front of you. Overall, the sword has very high combo potential because both its abilities lock the user in place when it's doing damage, and it's good for farming since both moves have the AoE damage and no knockback. And the moves are also extremely fast. Overall, it has pretty low damage compared to other swords, and it also has a small hitbox and short range. So to use this sword properly, your enemies need to be right in front of you and you need really good aim. But if you have that, then it shouldn't be a problem. You can destroy your enemies with this. Alrighty, next sword that we got on the list is the Vicento, and this is the first legendary sword on this list. It costs a total of 1 million belly, and you can buy from an NPC called the Master Sword Dealer, and it has pretty weird requirements. You have to be at least level 250 to buy it. The sword also does have a V2, which you can upgrade to for 15 metal scraps, 12 angel wings, and 10 magma ore, and this increases the sword's damage by 25%. The sword actually has 2 different versions, and to get the version 2, you just have to do a pretty long quest, but I'll be telling you guys about both the version's abilities. For version 1, the Z ability, it has a 50 mastery requirement. It's called Windbreaker, and for this one you just shoot out a bunch of air slashes to everything in front of you, and this has pretty medium range along with the area it covers, so it's pretty hard to miss your targets with this one. Next ability is the X ability, and this one is called Quake Spear, and for this one it basically just creates a huge spear where your cursor is and deals a bunch of damage to everything standing in that area. Alright, moving on to the V2 for this weapon. The first ability, Windbreaker, actually changes from just doing a bunch of sword slashes to dishing out an air ability and dealing way more damage, and the Quake Spear ability actually upgrades into a way bigger ball and deals way more damage on impact, making the sword way better. And obviously the V2 is better. I mean, it's literally called the V2 for a reason. Overall, this sword is pretty good. It has high damage and probably one of the best swords in the whole first sea. Next sword we got on the list is called the Trident. This is a rare sword, and once again, this is a sword that you cannot buy. You have to get it by defeating an NPC called the Fishman Lord, who spawns at the underwater city, and your drop chance for this sword is only 10%, so you're gonna have to kill him around 10 times to get this. The sword has a V2, and you can upgrade to it for 20 metal scraps along with 12 magma ore, and increases its damage by 25%. First ability from the sword is called Trident Throw, and it actually has 2 different functions. If you throw the trident at a player, then it pulls them towards you and deals a bit of damage to them. But if you don't throw it at an NPC or a player just at a wall, it actually grapples you towards that wall, which can make this ability pretty useful for movement and literally turn you into Spider-Man. Next ability is the X ability, and this one is called Water Pulse. It has a 125 mastery requirement, and for this one you basically just create a blue shockwave, dealing a bunch of damage to everything that surrounds you. Overall, this sword is good for beginners. It has really fast attacks compared to other swords in the first sea, and its M1 ability is one of the fastest out of every sword in the game. But overall, I wouldn't really recommend this sword for fighting people, but for grappling around and having fun, I definitely recommend this. It's probably one of the best swords in the game for that. Alright, next sword we got on the list is called the Pole. This is another legendary sword that we got here, and the way you get it is by defeating the Thunder God at Upper Sky, and you have a 5% chance of getting it dropped to you. This sword has a V2, which you can upgrade to for 10 radioactive rocks, 20 metal scraps, and 10 angel wings, and you get a 25% increase in damage. It has 2 different abilities, but starting off with the Z ability, which is called Explosive Cloud, and you basically just spawn in a cloud and you deal a huge electric explosion. And this ability has an 80 mastery requirement. Next ability is the X ability, and this one is called Lightning Rain, and it does exactly what it sounds like. It kind of just brings down lightning from the sky exactly where your cursor is and just deals a bunch of damage to your enemy. Overall, this ability has pretty mediocre stuns, decent damage, and low mastery requirements. But rubber users are completely immune to all the damage from the sword because they're all lightning based, and everyone knows that rubber users don't take any damage from lightning. So use this sword at your own risk. Moving on, we got the Saber Sword, and this is yet another legendary sword on this list, and the NPC you get it from is someone called the Saber Expert. This sword also does have a V2, and in my opinion, the V2 of that sword is probably the best sword in the whole game because it's just really overpowered for bounty hunting. This sword also does have an upgraded version, which you can do for 5 radioactive rocks, 10 metal scraps, and 10 magma ore, and increases the sword's overall damage by 15%. But let's talk about the moveset for the V1 and the V2. Starting off with the V1, the first ability is called Deadly Rush, and this one has a 50 mastery requirement. And for this one, you kind of just dash forward in a red spiral, dealing a bunch of damage to any enemy in your way. Next ability is called Triple Slash, and it does exactly what it sounds like. You just shoot off 3 different slashes simultaneously, dealing a bunch of damage. Alright, let's move on to the V2 now. The ability names are exactly the same, it's just kind of the scale of the abilities that increases. The Deadly Rush has way more effects and deals way more damage to your enemies. And the Triple Slash ability actually isn't really a slash anymore. The slashes become so big that they actually just turn into a cluster of energy that you shoot at your enemy, and they deal way more damage and way more knockback. And the mastery requirements obviously stay the same. Overall, this sword is really good damage. Like I said before, it does the most damage out of any sword in the whole game. And it's crazy that they put the best sword in the game in the first seat, but I guess a lot of people aren't unlocking the V2 until later on. Moving on, the next sword we got on this list is called the Sadi, and this is another legendary sword, and the NPC you buy from is a person called the Legendary Sword Dealer, and you need to pay 2 million belly to get it. To upgrade this sword to grade 2, you need to pay the blacksmith 8 mystic droplets along with 10 leather, and it increases the sword's damage by 15%. So now let's talk about the skills of this sword. First one is called Sword Dance with a 150 mastery requirement, and it's exactly what it sounds like. You kind of just dance around with your sword, dealing damage to everything that's around you. Next ability is the X ability, and this one has a 300 mastery requirement. It's called True Air Slash. And this one is also exactly what it sounds like. You just shoot out a huge golden slash through the air, and if it hits anyone, it just deals a butt ton of damage to them. Overall, this sword is really good because it has good damage, good hitboxes, decent combos, and it's good for farming. But it does have pretty mediocre range, but then again, it doesn't really matter if you get close to your enemies. Overall, a really S tier sword. Next sword we got here is the Wando, and this is another legendary sword, and guess what, you buy this guy from the same NPC for the same amount of money of 2 million belly, and the upgrade costs are exactly the same, 8 mystic droplets along with 10 leather, and this increases the sword's damage by 15%. First ability is the Z ability, and this one is called Continuous Slashing with 150 mastery requirement, and it's exactly what it sounds like. You just keep slashing your enemies for several seconds and it deals a butt ton of damage to them. Next skill is called Scatter Shot, and this is the X ability with a 300 mastery requirement, and for this one you shoot 3 different air slashes, but they're more like air balls, if that makes sense, and it deals a bunch of damage to anything it hits. This sword has high damage and one of the best swords for grinding and PvP in the second sea due to the amount of damage and long range moves it has. But then again, it is bad for PvP compared to some third sea swords because the third sea swords are actually crazy. But if you guys thought this sword was crazy, just wait till you hear the next one. Okay, so next up on the list, we got another legendary sword, and this one is called Shisui, and you buy it from the exact same NPC for the exact same amount of 2 million belly. To grade 2, it costs 8 mystic droplets along with 10 leather, and it increases the sword's damage by 10%. But now let's talk about the abilities. First ability is called True Quiet Rush, and this one has a 150 mastery requirement. And this is similar to many other sword moves where you dash forward, dealing a butt ton of damage to any enemy that's in your way. Next ability is called Focus Shot, and this one has a 300 mastery requirement. And this is kind of like an air slash, but not really an air slash. It's more like an air bullet, and you just deal a butt ton of damage to anything this bullet hits. Overall, this sword is really good. Then again, it's a legendary, so I shouldn't really need to mention that. Has really good range, fast moves with no end lag, good combo potential, deals a decent amount of damage, and both of its moves can hit multiple targets, so it also makes it semi-useful for grinding. But it does have small hitboxes, so just make sure your aim is good, and then you should be able to master this sword. Alright, now we got the true triple katana, and this is the first mythical sword that we have on this list. And this is actually a combination of all the 3 swords from before. The Sadi, the Shisui, and the Wando. This sword you get from an NPC called the Mysterious Man by doing a long boring quest, and 2 million belly to buy. And to get this, you actually need all the swords from before, so in reality the cost of the true triple katana is actually 6 million belly. Damn, that is expensive. But it's definitely worth it. Just wait till you hear what this sword has to offer. To upgrade this sword to grade 2, you need to pay the blacksmith 5 dragon scales, 20 mystic droplets, and 50 leather, and it increases the sword's damage by 15%. The first ability of this sword is called the Wolf Fang Rush, and it has a 150 mastery requirement. And for this one, you just dash forward and you create a huge ball around you, dealing damage to everything in your way. Next ability is called the Dragon Hurricane with a 350 mastery requirement, and for this one, you spawn in a huge tornado and you deal a bunch of damage to everyone that's caught in the tornado, and it sends your enemies flying away. Good things about this sword is that it's great for grinding. Both moves have little to no knockback, and it's really good for raids because of its huge hitboxes, and its M1 speed is highly above average. But the only bad thing about this sword, I would say, is how difficult it is to obtain. But if you do end up getting it, then it is amazing, and literally one of the best swords in the whole game. So the next sword we got on the list is called the Longsword. This is also a rare sword, and you can get it from a boss called the Diamond Boss with a 10% drop chance. And this boss is located at the Kingdom of Rose where the huge tree is. You can upgrade this sword to grade 2 by paying the blacksmith 10 radioactive materials, 10 metal, and increases damage by 25%. This sword has 2 abilities, and let's get into it. The Z ability is called Annihilate with a 100 mastery requirement, and this ability is pretty good because it does a bunch of sword slashes to everything around you, but it has pretty short range and you can't really send a flying slash out to anyone, but it still has pretty good damage. Next ability is called Glorious Smash, and for this one you just smash your sword into the ground, dealing damage to everything around you. Overall, this sword has high combo potential and decent for farming because all of the moves have AoE damage, and it has relatively low mastery requirements for a second sea sword. But the downside is that this sword has really close range and you can't really do damage to anything that's medium range or long range. But if you're fighting someone at close range, this is a really good sword. Alright, next sword we got here is called the Gravity Cane, and this is a rare sword, and you also get this one dropped from an NPC called Vegeta, but he only has a 3 to 5% chance of dropping it, so you're gonna have to grind this boss quite a few times to get it. You can upgrade the sword to grade 2 by paying him 3 meteorite ore along with 10 metal scraps, and increases the damage by 15%. So let's talk about the abilities now. First up, we got the Gravity Pull with the 125 master requirement, and for this one, exactly where you're aiming with your cursor, you'll actually just slam a bunch of gravity into there, dealing a bunch of damage and launching your enemy up into the sky. Next ability is called Meteor Barrage, and this is the X ability of the sword with a 250 mastery requirement. And for this one, it's actually similar to one of the abilities of the gravity fruit, and you spawn in a bunch of meteors dealing damage to everything around your cursor. Overall, this sword is pretty good because it has good damage, decent knockback, and both of its abilities can break observation. But it has a pretty small hitbox and all of its skills are actually ground based, so you can't really do damage to anyone flying in the sky. But overall, I would still say it's a really solid sword, and in my opinion, it's pretty cool because it literally spawns in meteors. Next sword we got here is called Jite, and this is a rare sword, and you can also get this from an NPC called the Smoke Admiral, and with a 10% drop chance after defeating him. So now let's talk about its abilities. First, we got the Z ability with a 150 mastery requirement, and this one is called Smoke Barrage. And this is also similar to one of the Smoke Fruits abilities, where you just shoot out a bunch of smoke pellets, dealing a bunch of damage to anything in its way. Next ability is the X ability, and this one is called Smoke Apparition. And for this one, you just deal a huge cloud of smoke all around your body in all directions of your user, dealing damage to literally everything that's around you. Overall, this sword is pretty good because it has high mobility and it can blind and stun your enemies, and it gives you an advantage in PvP even if it stuns them just for a bit. But the bad things are that its abilities are pretty hard to hit, you need really good aim, and it's not really good for sword mains. This is kind of just like a side sword that you want if you're a fruit main or something. Overall, still a pretty cool sword. Okay, so the next sword we got on this list is called Coco, and it is the first legendary sword that you get to see in the second sea. And the person you get it from is the Order boss, with a 10% drop chance. And the place you can fight this guy is during the Order boss raid. To upgrade the sword to its second grade, you need 10 tusks along with 50 metal pieces, and increases the sword's damage by 15%. So the first ability of this sword is called Electrical Stab with a 150 mastery requirement. And for this one, you kind of just dash forward with the blue trail, and you send anything in your way flying with a bunch of damage dealt to it. Next ability is called Injection Shot, and for this one you kind of just shoot a huge lightning fast projectile to wherever your cursor is. Overall, the sword has really great damage, very good for people that are hybrids between swords and fruits, especially for people with the control fruit. And it's good for combos and has really fast M1 clicks. But it has a really short stun duration and it's really difficult to obtain, and pretty high mastery requirements. But overall, if you do get your hands on this sword, then do not let go of it. Alright, this next sword that we got here is actually pretty unique. It's a legendary sword and it's called the Midnight Blade. And you don't actually buy this with money, nor do you get it from killing an NPC and getting it dropped to you. You buy it with a currency called Ectoplasm. And Ectoplasm is only available on the curse ship, and you also buy from an NPC on the curse ship called El Admin. And since this sword is a legendary sword, you already know it's going to be good. To upgrade this sword to grade 2, you need to pay the blacksmith 40 Ectoplasm along with 15 metal scraps, and increases the sword's damage by 15%. So let's start off with the first ability of this sword, Portal Opening, with a 150 mastery requirement. After this one, you just spawn in a portal where your cursor is, and you deal a butt ton of damage to any enemy standing there. Next ability is called Crescent Dash, and this is similar to many other swords on this list. You kind of just dash forward, leaving a huge trail of energy behind you, dealing a butt ton of damage to anybody that gets caught in it. Overall, this sword is really good because it has high damage and it's good to use at close range, especially with the Buddha fruit. Has good stuns and good mobility, and some awesome combo potential. But the bad thing is that it has really small hitboxes, so you need really good aim to use it. But if you have the aim, then the sword should be very good in your hands. Okay, so the next sword we got on the list is the Rengoku sword, and this is another legendary sword. And the way you get this is actually pretty unique. Once you defeat the awakened Ice Admiral at the Ice Castle on the second sea, he has a chance of dropping something called a hidden key. And this hidden key actually lets you enter a secret room underneath the staircase, and once you walk in there, you should be able to open a chest with the key. And that's where you get the Rengoku sword. To upgrade this sword to its grade 2, you need 8 tusks, 20 magma ore, and 15 metal scraps, and increases the sword's damage by 8%. So let's talk about the moveset now. First up, we got the Z ability, and this one is called Demon Slayer with a 150 mastery requirement. For this one, you dash forward, dealing a bunch of damage to the user by locking them in place. And this is probably one of the best abilities in the whole game, and it definitely looks the coolest as well. Next ability is called Burning Slash, and for this one, you actually shoot an air slash, but unlike the normal air slashes, you actually leave a trail of fire behind it, and it deals a bunch of damage. Overall, this sword is super good because it has good combo potential, good knockback, useful in PvP, high damage, and both its skills are really good. But you do need to do a bit of grinding for it, because the hidden key from the awakened Ice Admiral has a pretty low drop chance. And both its abilities have decently high mastery requirements. Like, you literally need a 350 mastery on the sword if you want to use both its abilities. But in my opinion, it's worth it. Next up, we got not really a new sword, it's a sword from before, the Pole V2, and it's one of the best swords in the whole game. It's a legendary sword, and the way you get a V2 is by completing a long tedious quest, and if you want to do that, you can search it up. And to upgrade the sword to grade 2, you need to pay the blacksmith 15 fishtails, 10 mystic droplets, and 12 metal scraps. So let's get right onto the V2. The first ability is called Hand of God with 150 150 mastery requirement. For this one, you just shoot a bunch of lightning to exactly where your cursor is, and it deals a huge amount of damage and stuns your enemy for a slight amount of time. Next ability is the X ability. With a 350 mastery requirement, this one is called Electrical Prison. For this one, you just shoot out a huge ball of electricity and it traps your enemy, not letting them leave for a fixed period of time, and it deals a butt ton of damage to them. It has really high stun damage, and it can actually do damage to rubber users, unlike the V1 of this. And you do need to pay a hefty sum of 5,000 fragments to unlock this, but in my opinion, it's definitely worth it. The first sword we got here is called the Dragon Trident. This sword you get from an NPC called the Tidekeeper, who has a 10% drop chance. You can upgrade this sword with the blacksmith by paying him 10 dragon scales along with 10 leather, and it increases its damage by 10%. So the very first skill of this sword, the Z ability, has a 150 mastery requirement. For this one, you kind of just shoot out a huge water dragon, dealing a bunch of damage and knockback to your enemy. Next ability is the X ability, and this one has a 350 mastery requirement, and it's called Water Dragon Prison. And it's kind of exactly what it sounds like. You just spawn in a huge water prison around your enemy, not letting them escape and dealing a bunch of damage to them. This sword has really high damage with its skills, has really great combo potential, and a pretty big hitbox compared to other swords. But it has really high mastery requirements, and grinding the best boss in the second sea with only a 10% drop chance just to get the sword, in my opinion, isn't really worth it. But let's go to the next sword. The next sword we got here is called Yama. This is yet another legendary sword. And this sword is actually pretty similar to the one from before, and you'll find out why in a bit. Anyways, let's just talk about the skills themselves. First up, we got the Hellish Slash. And this is exactly what it sounds like. You just create a huge red and black slash and you send it flying towards where your cursor is. And it deals a butt ton of damage and knockback to anything that hits it. Next ability is called Infernal Hurricane with a 300 mastery requirement. For this one, you dash forward with a sideways hurricane behind you and you deal a butt ton of damage to the enemy. The sword has both good moves and mobility, and it's one of the best swords in the game for traveling. And on top of that, it has really good combo potential. But one bad thing I would say is that it has a little bit lower than average damage compared to swords in the third and second seed. But then again, it's a really good sword, so I recommend you guys to get it. Next sword we got here is called Tushina. This is yet another legendary sword, and the person you get it from is the Logma boss with a 100% drop chance. But let's talk a bit about the abilities of this sword. The first ability is called Heavenly Lunges with a 150 mastery requirement, and it's kind of exactly what it sounds like. You just shoot a butt ton of lunges towards your enemy and it does quite a bit of damage to them. Next ability is called Celestial Ravager with a 300 mastery requirement, and for this one you just dash towards your enemy with a butt ton of aura behind you and you send them flying, dealing a butt ton of damage to them. Overall, this sword has a pretty good moveset and very high combo potential in my opinion, and it's really easy to hit your attacks even without a stun. It's good for grinding and has great damage, but it's pretty hard to obtain just because of how tedious the quest to get it is. But overall, if you do end up getting it, it's a really good sword. So the next sword we got here is called the Dark Dagger, and I'm guessing a lot of you watching did not know what this sword was. This is another legendary sword, and the boss you get it from is actually Rip Indra, the raid boss, with a 2.5% drop chance. So first up we got the Z ability, and this one is called Proficient Impale. It has a 150 mastery requirement, and you just dash forward and you just impale your enemy, dealing a butt ton of damage and knockback to them. Next ability is called Slamming Slash, and for this one you dash into their enemy and just striking them with your dagger multiple times. And this one is not really possible to dodge if you get caught in it. And therefore, the sword has really good combo potentials, a very low click cooldown, literally at 0.2 seconds, and it's almost impossible to escape the sword even with observation. Only downside I would say is that it's really hard to obtain. I mean, you literally have to kill the most powerful boss in the game, Rip Indra, and it only has a 2.5% drop chance. If you do end up getting this is a really good sword, or should I say dagger. Next sword we got here is called the Cavender, and this is yet another legendary sword. And you get this from an NPC called the Beautiful Pyre with a 5% chance of getting it dropped. To upgrade the sword to grade 2, you need 6 dragon scales along with 20 leather, and increases the sword's damage by a total of 10%. First skill of this sword is called Piercing Dash, and this is basically just a copy paste of some other sword moves. You just dash forward, dealing a butt ton of damage to anything that's in your way. Next ability is called Scattering Gust, and this one has a 300 mastery requirement. And for this one, you dash forward, dealing damage to everything that's behind and in front of you. Pretty unique ability if you ask me. Overall, this sword is great in PvP, pretty easy to aim with, and its moves can drain observation dodges. And both of its moves are mobility moves, so you can get around pretty quick with this. But one bad thing I would say is that this sword is pretty hard to grind with due to the dashes during the M1 attacks that occur with every single click, and that makes it pretty tedious for grinding. But if you just stick to PvP with the sword, then you should be fine. First sword we got in the third sea is called the Twin Hooks, and this is an uncommon sword, and you get it from an NPC called Captain Elephant with a 5% drop chance. To upgrade this sword to grade 2, you need 10 fishtails, 8 tusks, and 20 leather, and increases the sword's damage by 10%. This sword has 2 abilities. The first one is the Z ability, and this one is called Sky Cyclone with a 150 mastery requirement. It's exactly what it sounds like. It kind of just spawns in a cyclone from the sky, dealing a butt ton of damage to exactly where your cursor is pointed. Next ability is called Prehistoric Pun, and for this one you actually kind of grapple towards where your cursor is and you dash over there, dealing a butt ton of damage to anything in your way. And this ability has a 300 master requirement. Overall, a pretty mid sword for the 3rd C, but compared to the 1st C and 2nd C swords, this has really high damage. It also has a large hitbox, fast attack speed, and it's pretty good for combos. But other than that, I would just say it's pretty weak compared to the other swords from the 3rd C. But if you do get this, then you can use it for the time being. But just switch to a different sword if you get a better one. Next up, we got another mythical sword, and this one is called a Halo Scythe. And the way you get it is by defeating a boss called the Soul Reaper, and it has a 5% chance of dropping it. So the first ability of this scythe is called the Death Cyclone with a 150 master requirement. And for this one, you actually kind of shoot out a hellish looking tornado with black and orange effects. And it looks pretty cool. It's also really fast, which makes it pretty difficult to dodge. Next ability is called Soul Execution with a 350 master requirement. For this one, you actually dash forward with your sword, and unlike the other sword abilities, you can actually control where you go. And you can even change directions mid-dash. This sword is really good because it has a low cooldown, very little casting time with no startup. Literally, the abilities are instant. And it's really good for PvP because it can do high damage combos. But it's really difficult to get because you only have a 5% chance of getting it from the boss. And it's kind of hard to grind with. So if you do end up getting your hands on this sword, I only recommend it for PvP. Next sword we got on the list is the Buddy Sword, and this is another legendary sword, and you get this from the most troublesome NPC in the game, the Cake Queen, with a 5% drop chance. To upgrade this sword to its grade 2, you need 8 cocoa powder, 5 mystic droplets, along with 25 leather, and it increases the sword's damage by 10%. First skill we got from this sword is called Heat Slash, with a 150 master requirement. And for this one, it just shoots a really fast air slash and deals a butt ton of damage to exactly where it lands, and also does burn damage. Next ability is called Lightning Wave, with a 300 master requirement, and it does exactly what it sounds like. Well, kind of. It actually kind of shoots out pink lightning, but it doesn't really matter. It still does a butt ton of damage. Overall, this sword is pretty good because it has a really fast click for its melee attacks. All its moves are very fast, making them incredibly hard to dodge, and it has excellent combo potential along with a high damage output. But the bad thing I would say is it doesn't really have any mobility moves, but it doesn't really matter because you're not using your swords to move, are you? You're just using them to dish out a butt ton of damage, and this sword does the trick. The next sword we got here is the Spiky Trident, and this is yet another legendary sword, and the NPC you get it from is the Cake Prince and the Dough King. You have a 5% chance of getting a drop from the Cake Prince and a 15% chance from the Dough King. And both of these bosses are actually pretty tedious to fight, so either way, it's going to be really difficult to get. So the first ability from this sword is called the Dough Hurricane with a 150 master requirement. And for this one, you charge towards your enemy, locking them in place, and you just keep impaling them with your trident, and it just deals a butt ton of damage to them. And one thing I should mention is that all of the moves from this sword actually are similar to the Dough Fruit, so this trident would work really well with it. Next ability is the X ability, and this one is called Flying Trident Pull, and it does exactly what it sounds like. If you hit an enemy with it, then it does a butt ton of damage and pulls them towards you. But if you don't hit an enemy, then you just kind of get a free grappling hook. Overall, this is really good for combo extending and stunning, and both moves are good for traveling. And it does really decent damage, and it's great for grinding bosses, but not really that good for grinding. But when it comes to one-on-ones, it's completely unmatched. Next up is the Cursed Dual Katana, and this is a mythical sword. And this is a combination of the Yama and Tushida, and the way you get it is by doing the Cursed Dual Katana puzzle. And this sword actually has 3 different abilities, and I'll explain how in a second. First ability is called Revolving Ravager, and this has a 175 master requirement. For this one, you just spawn in a huge ball of hellish energy and you shoot it to exactly where your cursor is. Next ability, or should I say abilities, is called Slayer of Goliath with a 375 master requirement. And the reason I said the sword has 3 different abilities is that this X ability actually has 2 different versions, depending on whether you're standing on the ground or you're off the ground. If you're standing on the ground, then you basically charge up an attack and dash forward towards your enemy. If you're actually midair, then it actually lets you charge up your ability a little bit more, and it deals way more damage than the normal version. Overall, both abilities are really good, and in my opinion, this might be the best sword in the whole game, if it weren't for a secret sword towards the end of this video. This sword has really great range, both attacks are multi-target, and really fast M1 clicks. But it's really hard to obtain just because you have to get 2 S tier swords and complete a long and tedious puzzle just to get it. But if you do get your hands on this, then you should be able to destroy any player that comes your way. And that's pretty much it for swords in the 3rd C. But there's 2 more secret swords that a lot of you might have not known existed. And this first one I think many of you should know, but the next one definitely not. So now we got the Dark Blade, and this is a mythical sword, and the way you get it is actually through a game pass in the game, and it costs a total of 1,200 Robux to buy. But there's actually 2 different ways of getting it without paying those Robux. One is by trading trading, and the other way is by getting the Brazil cube and by fighting the Mihawk boss, who has a 100% chance of dropping it. But that's not gonna happen because only an admin can spawn in the Brazil cube, and the chances of running into an admin are very, very low. So now let's talk about the abilities of this sword. First up, we got the 1000 slices, and for this one you just create a huge ball of slices and you deal a butt ton of damage to anything that's in front of you. And the next ability is called Dark Air Slash, and it does exactly what it sounds like. It just sends off a huge slash flying off into the sunset. It goes really far, and this one only has a 50 master requirement. Overall, this sword can be really good when it's paired with the Ice, Dark, and Rumble, and it has really good combo potential along with really low master requirements for a mythical sword. But overall, I still think it's the worst mythical in the game because other mythical swords just outclass this one in every single way, except for master requirements. But at the end of the day, that doesn't really matter that much. Alright, now this is the secret sword that you've all been waiting for, the triple dark blade itself. And this is yet another mythical sword, and in secret this is actually probably the best sword in the whole game. But you're probably never gonna get it in your lifetime. And the reason for that is that the only people that get this are admins, or people that are really close friends with one. And keep in mind, do not beg for this sword because an admin will definitely not drop it to you then. And even then, your chances of meeting an admin in-game are really close to 0. But if you do end up being lucky enough to get this sword, then you should use it to its full potential. The first ability is called 1000 slices, and this has a 1 master requirement, and this is exactly the same ability as the normal dark blade, but just wait till the next one. The next ability is the X ability, and it's called Dark Air Slash, and it has a 50 master requirement just like the normal dark blade. But instead of shooting out just 1 dark air slash, the triple dark blade shoots out 3 different air slashes, and if someone is right in front of you, it deals 3 times the damage of the normal dark blade when all of these slashes just run into their face. I'm pretty sure that's an insta kill, but I'm not really sure because I don't really have this sword and I can't test it. Overall, this is the best sword in the whole of Blox Fruits, but you're probably never gonna get your hands on it. So starting off in the 3rd sea, you spawn in an island called Port Town, and this is for people that go from level 1500 to 1557. But if you're under level 1500, then you literally cannot be in the 3rd sea. Starting off, the first NPC we got here is the Pirate Millionaire. This is a level 1500 NPC that uses a Vicento V1 as their weapon. They have a total of 14,500 health and deal around 1100 to 1300 damage per hit, making them pretty powerful. Next NPCs we got are the Pistol Billionaires, and these guys are level 1525, and they use a musket as their weapon. Each of these guys has a total of 14,725 HP, and they do around 1,373 damage per hit, making them really powerful. Once you complete the quest for these guys, you get a total of 55,500,000 XP along with 15,000 belly. Overall, pretty solid NPCs. Then we got the very first boss in the 3rd sea. This is the Stone Boss. He's a level 1550 boss, and he has around 97,750 health, and he does 1,500 damage per hit. But once you complete the quest for this guy, you get 25,000 belly along with 60 million XP. And he also has a chance of dropping the pilot helmet, but it's only a 1 to 10, so you're gonna have to grind him a butt ton if you want it. So next island we're moving on to is called the Hydra Island, and something I should probably mention is that every island in the 3rd sea is literally massive. They're literally like 5 times the size of a normal 1st sea island. They're super huge. The Hydra Island is for people that go from level 1575 to 1700, and this island has 2 different quest givers. The first NPC you fight here is called the Dragon Crew Warrior. These pirates are level 1575, and they use a long sword as their weapon. Each one has a total of 15,175 HP, and they do around 1,400 damage per hit. To accept the quest for these guys, you have to be at least level 1575, and once you complete it, you get a total of 13,000 belly along with 58 million XP. Definitely making that worth it. Moving on to the next NPC, this one is called the Dragon Crew Archer, and this NPC is level 1600, and they have a total of 15,600 HP, and they deal around 650 damage per hit, but they punch pretty fast. Once you complete the quest for these guys, you get 15,000 belly along with 60,500,000 XP. Now we're going on to the next quest giver at this island, and the first one is the Female Islander. Female Islanders have 16,125 HP each, and they do around 1,100 damage per hit. To accept the quest for these guys, you have to be at least level 1625, and once you complete it, you get 13,000 belly along with 62,500,000 XP. Next NPC is the Giant Islander. The Giant Islanders are exactly what they sound like. They're literally giants, and these guys use the basic combat style as a weapon, but don't let that fool you. They're really powerful. To accept the quest for these guys, you should be at least around level 1650, and once you complete that, you get 15,000 belly along with 64,500,000 XP. Next up, we got the boss of the Hydra Island, the Island Empress herself. This boss has a total of 130,000 HP and does around 1,100 damage per hit. She also uses the Love Fruit as as a weapon a lot, but she can only use the old version of it. And that's actually a fruit you can't get anymore. She also has a 2 to 5% chance of dropping the serpent bow, which is a pretty decent gun for starting off in the 3rd sea. To fight this boss, it's recommended to be at least level 1675, and once you complete the quest for her, you get 70 million XP along with 30,000 belly. Overall, a pretty solid boss. But let's go to the next island. Okay, so the next island we're going to is called the Great Tree, and this island surprisingly only has one quest giver, and that's crazy considering how massive this island is. To be on this island is recommended to be at least level 1700 to level 1775. And the first NPC we got on this island is the Marine Commodore. The Marine Commodores are enemies that are level 1700, and obviously they can use hockey since they're in the 3rd sea. And to complete the quest for these guys, you have to defeat a total of 8 of them. And once you do that, you get 13,000 belly along with 68 million XP. And these NPCs are pretty tough. They dual wield katanas as their weapons, and they have a total of 16,500 HP each. And they also dish out a good amount of damage. Next NPCs we got are called the Marine Rear Admirals, and these guys are level 1725. And they use the basic combat style as their weapon, but don't let that fool you because they're really powerful. These guys have a total of 16,825 HP, and they dish out a high amount of damage per hit. To fight these guys, it's recommended to be at least level 1725, and once you complete the quest for them, you get 70,500,000 XP along with 15,000 belly. Finally, we're moving on to the boss, and this one is actually kind of funny. It's the Kilo Admiral, which makes no sense because how would someone with the Kilo fruit end up being an Admiral? But anyways, this boss is pretty solid. She has a total of 138,000 HP and does around 1,200 damage per hit, and obviously she uses the Kilo fruit. And once you complete the quest for this Admiral, you get 35,000 belly along with 78 million XP. But this boss actually cannot use every ability of the Kilo fruit. She can just use the X and C abilities. And even though it's the Kilo fruit, they dish out a lot of damage. And obviously this boss spawns in every 30 minutes just like most other bosses in the game. But that's it for the Great Tree. Let's go to the next island. Alright, moving on to the next island. This one is called the Floating Turtle, and this is one of the craziest islands in the 3rd sea. And the reason I say that is because this island has not 1, not 2, but 3 different quest givers, making you have to fight a huge amount of NPCs until you're done with this island. And this island is recommended for people that go from level 1775 to level 1975. So you already know it's crazy. You have to gain 200 levels at this island. But then again, it's pretty massive, so there's place for everything. The first NPC we got here is the Fishman Raider. The Fishman Raiders are level 1775 NPCs, and they use the Shark Sword as a weapon, and normally the X skill. And they obviously also drop fishtails since they're fishmen, which kind of makes sense. Once you complete the quest for these guys, you get 73 million XP along with 13,000 belly. These guys have a total of 7,375 health, and they dish out a whopping 1,500 damage per hit, making them pretty powerful as starting NPCs on this island. Next NPCs we got are the Fisherman Captains, and these are kind of just better versions of the NPCs from before. These guys obviously drop fishtails as well. To fight them, it's recommended to be at least level 1,800, and these guys use a trident as their weapon. You remember that boss from the 1st sea, the Fishman Lord? Well, they all have this now, and they can use all the abilities from it, the trident throw and the water pulse. Once you complete the quest for these guys, have a whopping 17,700 HP each, and they do around 2,000 damage per hit, making them really powerful. Once you complete the quest for these guys, you get 15,000 belly along with 75,500,000 XP, definitely making that grind worth it. Moving on to the next quest giver, we got the Forest Pirates, and these NPCs are level 1,825. They were added in update 15, and they use katanas as their weapon. Obviously they got hockey as well. These guys each have a whopping 17,625 HP, and they do around 960 damage per hit. Once you complete the quest for these guys, you get a total of 78 million XP along with 13,000 belly. Next NPCs are called the Mythological Pirates. To fight these guys, it's recommended to be at least level 1,850. And these guys actually have the electric fighting style, and then you can use the X and C moves from it, but not the Z one. That would just make it way too OP and pretty difficult to fight. These guys have a total of 17,250 HP, and they do around 1,500 damage per hit. But once you complete the quest for these guys, you get 13,000 belly, 81 million